Hi, and welcome back to Bus Vintage Bikes. So in this video, I'm going to take you through part 2 of the restoration of this Colnago Super. As you can see from the last video, the frame has been stripped down, and I'm going to take you through just some of the things that I've picked up on the frame that need a bit of attention. We're going to have a look at this fork, how much of it is chromed and what condition the chrome is in, and if we need to have it re-chromed. And then I'm going to take you through the BB and the headset, both of them record, and we're going to have a look at the condition of that and what the years have done to it. So stick around, let's go through it. So this is the fork crown, and as you can see, it has seen better days. Rust has got to it. I think we're going to clean this up a little bit. Just using maybe some fine steel wool or some aluminium foil with WD-40 and see how we can improve it, and if it's indeed necessary to have the fork re-chromed to improve that. We might get it to a state where we can clean it up and just leave it with a patinaed look, although I'm not quite sure how that would suit a completely resprayed frame. And although the fork looks like it was spray painted, it had the blue, there are hints in the paint, like there, that this fork is chromed underneath. So I'm going to hit it with a bit of paint stripper and see what's happening over there. And just to show you, you can see the Columbus logo in the fork race. Okay, so I've left that paint stripper on for a few minutes. Now I'm going to use this little artist spatula type duty dab to scrape it off. Because us restorers are artists, so we're allowed to use artist tools, right? Just a heads up, if you are working with paint stripper, use protective clothing, at least gloves. These chemicals can be pretty harsh, and always a good idea to use eye protection, of course. Okay, so this is just a test piece that I'm doing. Just going to wipe it off with the old rag. Okay, so I'm not totally convinced we've got to the bottom of that primer on that fork. So I'm going to put a bit more paint stripper on and leave it for a few more minutes. We get all the way down. This paint stripper that I'm using is not the best. I have to go through a couple iterations of it on most of the projects that I've done. I prefer using a blast media through our local agents called Cape Metal Restorations that do a wonderful job. But for this instance, we're just going to just use a paint stripper just to see if we can determine what's going on with this fork as far as the chrome goes. So I'll leave that for a few minutes longer. You definitely see the chrome, initial chrome at the top of the fork. I'm going to take an old Scotch-Brite pad and just give it a rub. See what we're dealing with. Okay, so to me it looks like this is definitely not chromed. You can see where the chrome actually stops. You can see the bronze layer underneath the chrome. It goes from chrome through to, was it nickel plated before they do the chroming? Can't quite remember the chroming process. But this is definitely not chrome. This is base steel. And possibly on the inside of this lug. Pretty sure if I took the paint off, or when I do take the paint off here, you'll find that is chromed as well. as well as underneath the fork crown. I can see that's obviously chromed when the top of the crown was chromed. So the fork itself, the rest of the fork, definitely not chromed, so it will get a respray. Okay, so while I was at it, I figured if I'm gonna apply some paint stripper, I might as well strip all the paint off the fork. So that is all the paint done. Get a close up of it. You can definitely see no chrome over there. I've just rubbed this down now with a Scotch-Brite pad just to get all the old paint off. I'm not going to get it perfect because it will flash rust, and when the frame goes in, the fork will go in along with the frame, and get a bead blast at the same time just to get the surface perfect for paint. So I think now we're going to take a look at if we can improve what's going on with the rust on top of these fork crowns. So I'm going to see if we can improve this rust situation on the fork crown. And what I'm going to use for that is just a little scrunched up piece of aluminium foil and a little bit of WD-40, which I'm going to spray onto the affected area. I'm just using the WD-40 as a lubricant for the rub, and we'll see what sort of effect we can get. So often if you have small pitting in the aluminium, in the chrome, the rust will come off quite quickly. But if your pieces of chrome are missing, there's really nothing much you can do about that. Doing this process just exposes just how bad the chrome damage is. If you find that the aluminium foil is not doing the job, a small jeweler's screwdriver, the flat, often helps as well. So this is the small flat of the screwdriver that I'm referring to. You can see this piece is being stubborn. I'm just going to use the screwdriver and give it a rub. At this stage, you're not too concerned about scratching the chrome too badly, because anything is better than the rust all over it, of course. You can always go back and polish it. Once I got the worst off, I'm going back to the aluminium foil. So it's often a time-consuming, tedious process, but if you're thorough enough, you might be rewarded with some amazing results. Let's give it a clean up and have a look at what we're dealing with. So what looked like rust that was totally through on the chrome is cleaned up altogether. I mean, that big piece that was here, before I started this process, I was convinced that that was flaked through. It isn't. It's a lot of small pores in the chrome that I can notice that had rusted through and formed the rust pattern. But now that it's gone, you can see the base chrome is still there. As too with these edges over here, the base chrome is still there, which is a good sign. Let's hope that continues for the rest of the fork. The crown, especially that bit around the logo. Right, so using that same process, I just continued on the rest of the fork, and that's the result. The only difference I did here was that after I had done the cleanup with the rust, I actually polished it with a little bit of Autosol, which is a chrome polish, and that's the result I get. So based on this, I really do not think it's necessary to re-chrome this fork. I think it actually looks, the patina that the bit of rust is left on it is not bad, and it's not as so bad that it distracts from the fork entirely, or it won't distract from the finished bike entirely. What I will do is I'll obviously repaint the clover leaf and the Colnago text logo in yellow, and that'll round it off nicely again as well. But a lot of that rust that was on there was surface rust, and it was able to be removed. When doing this, you can apply this paint quite liberally, to a limit, of course, because you can go afterwards. Once it's dry, I'll just go over it with a scalpel and scrape off the extra paint that's on the chrome. That won't be too difficult to do. You at least want to get it in all those grooves. And of course, before you apply this paint, do some preparation to get it clean as well. So in this instance, I used a toothbrush and rubbing alcohol, applied quite liberally, and then scrubbed it out with the rubbing alcohol, and that was to get rid of the traces of polish that I had put on the bike as well. So that's the left side done. I'll just turn it around and do the right side. So this is the result after I've cleaned up the chrome, or the overrun paint on the chrome. So I simply used my nail for that and then just rubbed it off. And while it's not perfect, it still turned out better than I expected, considering the original condition of the fork crown. And I think it still shows the life of the bike, the little bit of patina that's on there, showing it certainly hasn't led the easiest life. And in artificial light, like in the garage at the moment, you tend to see the imperfections a little bit more than in natural light. In natural light, you are drawn to the shine on the chrome a lot quicker. So I think that'll look good on the bike once it's done, and it'll still suit the new paint job without distracting from it. Something else I thought might be worth mentioning on these forks is on the inside of the fork leg, you'll see a little inset with a clover leaf in there. So half of that is chromed, the top bit, and the bottom half is normal steel or non-chromed, yeah. So when we have the paint job done, that inset will be painted entirely, and then I'll go in afterwards and I'll touch up that clover in yellow to match the clovers on top of the fork crown. Something else I noticed, just bringing this frame down, is the, if we can zoom in, the Columbus logo of the dove on the actual tubing on both fork legs. It's on this side as well. Sorry, let me just, and there it is on that fork as well, on the fork leg. So yeah, thought that was a nice touch from Columbus tubing on these old forks. This is just to give you a quick view of what the BB looks like. So you can see it's a original Campagnolo BB, and it's a 36 by 24, which is an Italian threaded BB, which is what you'll expect to find on a Colnago, of course, being Italian. And then on the inside of the BB, what you're looking for is on the race face inside, you are looking for pitting, so marks in it that would cause the bearings to run not smoothly. And on this face I can see nothing. I have cleaned it up ever so slightly with a rag to give you an idea. So as I'm looking through this face in here, it is totally smooth, and that's pretty unbelievable if you consider that the bike is probably 40 years plus old. Not to say that the BB is that old, of course it could have been replaced, but the chances are good the BB is very old, just looking at the overall condition of it. These dust caps were fitted to the old BBs, especially when the BB had the ball bearings running in a race like this. They weren't the modern sealed BBs, because the BB goes, when it goes into the BB shell, the down tube of the bike, or the seat tube, sorry, and the down tube join at this angle at the junction. And then if any dirt gets into the tubes through maybe the seat when you're replacing the saddle, sorry, and or rust that's inside the frame, it stops it dropping down onto the BB and then going into the ball bearing races. So it's more just a protective cup that sits in there, and it'll sit just like that inside the BB. And these are obviously the ball bearings running inside the race. And off of that, the other thing you want to check is the actual axle. And if I clean that up and I spin this axle, you also, just going to remove that off, you're also looking to see if there's pitting along this face, because the pitting will also indicate whether either the bearings have been damaged and they've caused damage to the axle. And in this case it's smooth as well. I'm just going to do on this side as well. And if I go through it over here, same thing, absolutely spotless. So pretty amazing considering the age. Lovely. You can see the Campagnolo logo engraved into the axle as well. And there's the size. It says 70 SS, so 70 being the diameter in millimeters, and sorry, not the diameter, the width in millimeters with the BB shell. So most Italian bikes have a 70mm BB shell. So that's just a look at the BB. Very pleased that we will be able to reuse this one, because finding these old Campagnolo BBs are quite rare in South Africa, and you pay a premium for them if you need to get them. So I've cleaned up this headset, and I was using paraffin and a toothbrush to get it cleaned up. And just something I'd like to mention when doing this: where possible, always replace bearings. But there are instances where you might be working on something like this where you cannot get a replacement bearing or bearing race. So you're going to utilize the existing one. If that's happening, in all instances, make sure that you flush these bearings and the race entirely with whatever medium you're using to clean it, in this case paraffin. Because in the grease that's residing in between these bearings, there are suspended particles of either chrome, aluminium, dirt, grit, rust, whatever it might be. And it's those abrasive particles that are obviously causing the damage on a bearing. So you want to flush this entirely, and what I'll often do is once I've just cleaned it using the paraffin and a toothbrush, just the bearing itself, if I'm going to reuse it, I'll drop it into a little jar with some paraffin on it and give it a good shake up just to make sure that it's flushed entirely. Because this is what happens. I'm going to try and show you here. So this was only used to clean the headset, and this is what came out of it. And if I zoom, I'm going to zoom in here. Those are the suspended particles that came out of that headset. And you can't see it too well on the camera, but maybe I can point it out for you. There's pieces like here. There's literally pieces of chrome that you can see there, and aluminium. So if you just wipe off the grease out of these bearings, you never actually get the bearing entirely clean. So yeah, make sure you flush it. And then just to go through this and show you the quality of these old record headsets. So this is the base cup, and that's the bearing face, and it's still in very good condition, unbelievably good condition, to be honest. That's the top cup, same situation there, nice smooth bearing face. You can't see too much on the video. Let's see if we can zoom in a bit. Yeah, there we go. So you can see the shiny strip around the outside is where the bearing has been running on. A few little slight marks here, but certainly nothing to worry about. So fortunately the headset also in very good condition and can be used again. I mean, look at the quality of this. Even the spacer has got the Campagnolo Italy patent logo inlaid into it. Incredibly light as well, to be honest. So that's the headset done and waiting to be installed. So moving on to the saddle and the seat post. This is a lovely Concord saddle. Unfortunately, it's obviously seen better days. Must have belonged on a Bianchi at one stage in his life, I'd imagine, but as you can see, it's not looking too healthy now. And I don't think this color is going to fit this bike when we're done with it. Fortunately, still very original. It's got the Profile logo on both sides, left and right, and this lovely inlay that's still in it. You can see the shape of this saddle, extremely racy looking. And if I turn it around, you can see the logo is still on that side. So I've got just the guy in Musa Claassen to sort this out for us, who is our local saddle go-to guy in Cape Town. He works out of Bridge Cycles, and the man is an absolute master when it comes to covering a saddle. So this is going to go off to him, and I think we're going to do it in a perforated black leather. Or maybe even white to go with the blue. We'll still give that some thought. And this is the Campag record seat post. See the Campagnolo logo inscribed on it. This is the shorter option. I think they only came in 2 lengths, this being the shorter of the 2. The Made in Italy logo on it. A lot of scratches below, but not so many above. So I'll first start off by cleaning this up and polishing it, and we'll see how bad those scratches are, and from there I'll determine if I want to sand it down and give it a high gloss mirror polish. Let's first see what we can get it to look like before we decide to sand it all the way down, because when we do that you actually end up taking a clear coat off of the top part of the aluminium. As a start, I've got quite a worn and soft Scotch-Brite pad on my drill attachment here. And all I'm going to do is I want to clean up these rust marks and some of the dirt off of this post, just so I can assess the condition further. So that's the result of going over it with a Scotch-Brite pad. So what happens below the limit marker over here, I'm not overly concerned with, because that shouldn't be sticking out the post anyway. So don't take too much material off of that if you're doing this yourself. Just clean it up, just to tidy it up. But don't take material off, because then you'll have your seat post sitting loosely in your seat tube. There is one scratch at the top here where my thumb is now. I'm concerned about that scratch and that scratch. I can see two marks on the post, obviously where the clamp has squeezed the post there and there in the past. And other than that, it actually looks quite good. So I'm going to polish this, and then if those marks bug me after polishing, I'm going to sand them out and take it back to a mirror. So let's get polishing. So after the first pass on the buffing wheel, I can see where the work is required here now. So that scratch is still visible over there. And there's another scratch up here. It runs around the top of it. And then still minor scratches down at the bottom here. And then obviously the bigger and deeper ones where the seat post clamp actually grabbed it. So it doesn't look like this Campy or Campag post has got a coating on it, unlike some of the Shimano posts. So I'm now going to climb into this with water paper, and I'm probably going to start at around 600 to 800 grit just to get these scratches out. I won't go below the limit mark, of course, as I mentioned, and then I'll work through the different grades until I get all these scratches out, and then we'll take it back to the wheel and we'll get it polished up to the final result. Right, so about half an hour of sandpaper, wet paper, through all the grades. I went down to 360 in this instance, just to get the worst scratches out, and then all the way up to 2000. You end up with a seat post that looks matte grey like this one does. And your scratches should be gone. And now we're going to put it on the polishing wheel and see what result we can get out of it. So that's the final result after a rub down with a clean rag. No more scratch marks above the limit mark. And if you've done your job well enough, you should be able to have a shave in it. Ready for installation. So if you've hung around this long, thanks for joining me on part 2 of this Colnago Super build, or rather restoration, not a build. I've been watching too many build videos on YouTube. In part 3, we're going to tackle cleaning up this crankset. A lovely Strada record crank with some pantographing on it. I'll be doing the front derailleur. And to be honest with you, I'm not quite sure what front derailleur this is. The model number. I don't know if this is a record derailleur. If you know, let me know in the comments, please. And then we'll be cleaning up the Super Record rear derailleur, that we can obviously see what it is. And we have some derailleur wheels that need replacing there as well. Both of them are cracked, so that'll take some searching. Until then, keep well. See you in the next video. Cheers.